Well, hello, and thank you for tuning in. Today's guest is Daniel Prince, the host of the Once Bitten podcast and author of Choose Life, the tools, tricks, and hacks of long-term family travelers, world schoolers, and digital nomads. Daniel's a former FX trader turned Bitcoiner who's been traveling the world. He's taken the path less traveled and adopted what many would describe as the digital nomad life. In it, he shares how it's actually not as difficult as you'd imagine, and we had an absolutely fascinating discussion about the importance of meeting Bitcoiners in real life, how he found Bitcoin, socialized ideas that we've just adopted and taken at face value. We riff about politics, crypto versus Bitcoin, whether the halving is priced in, and a whole lot more. I'm recording this from my humble abode here in Murrurundi as we celebrate the third year of the Bitcoin Bush Bash. And so, in a sense, this podcast was really timely because the first little bit of it was all about how amazing it is to meet Bitcoiners in real life. And once again, true to form, this latest Bush Bash has been just that. Having an absolute blast and looking forward to a wonderful evening of steaks by my friend Brisket. All right, over to the show.
Which one's the best crypto asset? Well, Bitcoin's the best crypto asset. Okay, what's the second best? There is no second best. There's no second best crypto asset.
Hello friends, and welcome to the Why Bitcoin Show. I'm your host, Dale Warburton. It's a weekly podcast on why Bitcoin matters and what makes it completely different to all other cryptocurrencies. If you're interested in Bitcoin and you'd like to distill crypto fact from fiction, you've come to the right place. All right, so we're officially live, Daniel. We were having a wonderful chat. And as has been the case in several of my discussions, I realized actually we should be recording this. So Daniel Prince, it's a real pleasure to have you on the Why Bitcoin Show.
Thanks for having me on, man. Yeah, we were making the rookie mistake of talking pre-record where all of the magical conversation happens. So yeah, we had to stop ourselves and get into it. But actually, it's a really interesting topic because it's one I'm really focused on, have been really focused on for the last 18 months to 2 years. And it involves the people we were talking about, Izzy and Wiz, two Aussie legend Bitcoiners. And it's about this in-person meetup, this vibe that you get when you get to a conference, when you meet other Bitcoiners. And you were talking about the first event that you went to and it being like your wedding. So riff on that, man, because people hear me say it all the time. I want to hear, I want them to hear it from the mouth of somebody else. When you get to meet Bitcoiners in real life.
It's like, I spent my first year as a Bitcoiner anonymous and not engaging with real people. And I didn't find it that valuable. In fact, I found myself dragged towards the very hostile, angry side of it, which was during, the lockdowns and all that. And it was just fulfilling that role. And it was only when I went to my first Bush Bash, which I just got in the car and I drove about 8 hours by myself. My wife thought I was mental and she was like, do you know anyone there? I'm like, no. And so you go and you just meet these people in real life. And even though they come from such different walks of life, like you just go, wow, like some of the most intelligent, thoughtful, intellectually curious people, freedom orientated. It's like, I don't have to censor myself. There's just this common thread. And like, yes, we don't agree on everything, but like, we agree on the fundamentals. And yeah, I mean, I'm sure you had that sort of experience too.
Yeah, it's like nothing else. It literally is like nothing else. And when Izzy came over to Riga last year, when Wiz, pulled him along, kicking and screaming, like, right, I think he said, Izzy, you're an unconnected node. Like we need to get you connected. You've got too much to give. You've got too much knowledge here. And, your time is now to enter the Bitcoin space with your voice and with your knowledge. And he ended up taking over as CEO of Amber. Like this is crazy, And he said it changed his life. Changed his life. Like bam. Like the first they hit bit block boom over in Dallas first, and then come to Riga, and that's where I met him. And like, yeah, you like and he will talk about all this. A lot of people, say it's a lot of woo-woo and whatever else, but we are frequency, right? We are energy. And if you are surrounded by low frequency, low energy, non-player characters, 9 hours a day, which most of us were or are still trapped in our fiat jobs.
Mhm.
When you get to a place where there's a couple of hundred people that are all vibing on a completely different energy level, totally different frequency, much higher, hope, optimistic, want to talk about anything, will engage with absolutely anybody, will not ignore you if you come up and introduce yourself, and you'll find yourself within the most deepest conversation you've ever had in your life, and 3 hours have gone past and you've just been stood up talking. Like, what? How did that
Yes.
just happen? And it's so important. It's this social layer of Bitcoin that I've seen so much value from, and I try and take my family with me as often as I can.
Mm.
So I've always got one or two of the kids, or maybe even three of the kids in tow. Three of them came to Riga. My wife couldn't make it, but she's been to a handful as well, because exposing them to that positive energy is important for every other Bitcoiner who's following down the rabbit hole. Get your family involved as soon as possible, because otherwise then you really are alone, and lockdowns were tough. Lockdowns were really, really tough. And like you, I got angry, man. Like, calling out bullshit on Twitter was almost a pastime. But I suppose I was lucky I had an outlet. I started the Once Bitten podcast in 1st of Feb 2020. So I had that to keep me going. Yes. I had Bitcoiners to keep talking to all through lockdown, and they had a hell of a lot of time because nobody could do anything or go anywhere. So I managed to stay sane by talking to Bitcoiners. So once we come out of that lockdown and I could go and start meeting all of these people in real life, that's when I felt that extra layer of magic. And that's why I'm so bullish on meetups. Start a meetup. Doesn't matter if one person comes. Go find a meetup. Just walk in like you did. You drove 8 hours, like, to not even a conference, right? It was just a meetup. Or get a ticket to the next conference. Choose one next year and get to that. And it's funny. Who was I talking to about this yesterday? Joe Hall. He's at a Web3 summit. He's the Bitcoin maxi within Cointelegraph, right? So he has to go to all of these other kind of rubbishy type crypto events. And I'm like, what's the vibe like? He's like, well, it's nothing like a Bitcoin maxi event, right? He's like, yeah, I know. Right? Imagine like a soft furnishings convention. What are you going to find in there? You're going to find a bunch of normies just dying for it to get to 4 or 5 so they can leave the booth and go and get, a few beers down their neck. Yeah, that's not Bitcoin at all. No. Like, Bitcoiners would stand in the conference hall. You have to kick them out of the conference hall. Like, can everybody fuck off, please? Because we're closing the thing down.
Oh, it's so true. You touched on so many aspects there. I mean, the one is Bitcoiners are filled with hope, and I think that distinguishes us from a lot of people. I've just encountered a lot of optimism, and it has given me a sense of optimism. And then you also touched on involving your family, which is important because, I was in Bitcoin for 2.5 years before my wife got it, and she was orange pilled, and it required me to actually start a podcast. And it wasn't me actually converting it was somebody else. And she gets it now. And she came to one of the bush bashes up in far north Queensland and met the people. And, it's initially like you meet all of these very different kind of people, because they're all like, I mean, let's face it, at this point, I feel like we're kind of a little bit weird. I don't know if you feel like that. Like, we're the weird people who think differently. Like, we're just unconventional. So you got all these kind of, I don't want to say misfits per se, but we're just different types of people. And so she got to meet her and really get a sense of kind of why I care so much. And that was really important. And yeah, I mean, there's just nothing like people, meeting the people in the flesh. And I've said it on my pod several times, like, just go to a meetup. I mean, I didn't even go to the local meetup in Brisbane first. I actually just went to the Bush Bash. So, whatever you do, just get in front of people, because they're open, they're engaging. And the only exception I'd say is maybe because you're a little bit further down this path, and you can comment on this, are there people who are, let's say, Bitcoin celebrities who are a little bit kind of, they sort of they kind of are now beyond the plebs. They don't have time for the plebs. I mean, I get that sense from some, with respect. I mean, I like what they're doing, but I mean, is that something you've encountered or thought about?
Yeah, maybe. So one last thing before we get into that, there is an app now. It's a year old. I'm shilling it because I sit on the advisory board. It's Orange Pill app. So if anybody's listening and hasn't tried that app, that is the best way. I mean, I wish this was around a few years ago when I was just lonely as all hell and trying to find meetups, but it lists other Bitcoiners on there. It's pure signal. You have to pay to get on there. So there's no crypto bros or anything like that. And all of the events are listed there as well. So you can find upcoming and local events. So even if you're traveling, you can find places to go. And BTC Maps is another great app to download and find places that accept Bitcoin.
Yes.
It's constantly being updated and honed and refined. So they're two good things to, actionable points for people listening to go and have a look at. To your point about, are there those people that don't go and mix with the plebs? What? Yeah, I mean, currently I'm helping the Free Madeira organization in Madeira put together the conference 1st to 3rd of March next year. And it's going to be awesome. And we've got some great people coming, some incredible guests. And one of the conversations was around this idea of whale tickets and VIP tickets. A unfortunate fact is, for a lot of the conferences, in fact, all of them, they are a necessary evil because you need, we are just a bunch of plebs that have never, ever done event organization before ourselves, right? This is one thing I'll say for anyone that has anything bad to say about a conference, please remember, people doing it, they're just making this up on the fly. And therefore, for me, every single one is a success because you got a couple of thousand people together regardless. Now, what can tend to happen is those VIP areas, the people that, perhaps given the tickets to come and speak might end up getting caught back there rather than getting down onto the floor with the plebs. I don't think they're doing that purposefully. I think what's going on is that's where the investors are. That's where the venture capitalists go, because they're the guys that buy the tickets to go and mingle with the people. So there is actual business discussions going on back there, which are very important for the whole ecosystem going forward. Like I think we said before when we were talking about sponsors and things like that.
Yeah.
The sad fact of the matter is Bitcoin companies are really bootstrapping, barely have any kind of funding. It's been a bear market for 2 months. Maybe this turns around when we go into the bull and they can start getting the funding that we need them to get. But that's where those discussions happen back there. So that can come across, I would imagine, as people being too aloof. But that said, we were in Lugano, the Plan B summit a few weeks ago, and Adam Bax just walking around, mixing it up with the plebs and just chatting. It's amazing to go. I would say to anyone, you don't need to buy those VIP tickets. You're just a pleb. Get there. Don't overspend. Don't be wowed by, I could have a steak dinner with XYZ if I pay an extra 400. Invariably you'll get to meet most of the people that you're looking to meet anyway, just walking around the floor.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's fair enough. Hey, and I suppose, for the average person who's not trying to make a career out of it, there's not a huge amount of value in, paying for those VIP tickets. I guess it's a bit different in some contexts if you're trying to be a podcast like me, trying to get in front of some people who you hope to interview at some point. But yeah, so
well, soon enough you'll get the tap on the shoulder to come and host panels and things like that, because you'll already be recognized as somebody that is good at asking questions and not afraid to put yourself out there. That's what happened in my case. People said, would you come and host this panel, or would you mind emceeing for one of the afternoons? Like, yeah, of course. I would love to, absolutely. Would you mind giving a couple of wristbands to my wife and kids? And, that's easy for a conference to do. That's like printing. You just print wristbands, right?
Yeah.
So but invariably you end up paying your own way there, or sorting out accommodation yourself. Again, this might all look different in 5 years' time, but for now it's very much a pleb endeavor, and get there. Anybody that's listening to any event that you can, because it's the best way to up your knowledge, plug into the network, find your tribe, and you will be inspired to start something else. It doesn't matter what that is: podcast, YouTube video, help out, give your time to another startup, whatever. But it will carry you forward in a very positive sense in the next 3 to 5 years.
There we go. That's the clip. I'm going to use that clip. That's a wonderful quote. Awesome. So, we've spoken a little bit about sort of the social layer of it, but if we zoom out a little bit and go back to your days when you were in the fiat world, trading FX, as I understand, how has Bitcoin sort of changed your lens to the way you look at the world? And I guess, did you come at it from a sort of financial investment macro perspective? And yeah, I'd love to hear that journey per se.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, my whole career was spent in financial markets. I spent the best part of 18 years in foreign exchange markets, directly brokering trades for the world's banks, basically. I started in London and then moved across to Singapore and spent 15 years in Singapore doing that. I spent the last year of my career in a slightly different area in the commodity markets. So I got another look at a different kind of area of financial markets and come to the understanding of, wow, like this whole thing is smoke and mirrors. This is weird. And I hadn't found Bitcoin at that point. I'd poo-pooed it many times. I thought internet money was for geeks and absolutely, retarded, to be honest, because of the hubris that I was surrounded with. Imagine there I am, considered successful in air quotes because I had a job in finance.
Mm-hmm.
I'd come from just a small town in Essex, thought I'd made it, sitting in Singapore on one of the top performing desks and servicing clients such as Goldman, UBS, NatWest, whoever, right? Name them. And then all of a sudden I read something about there's internet money for geeks, and it's trading against the US dollar. Like, what?
Yeah.
No way in the world in my career will there ever be a dollar Bitcoin pair for us to quote options on. That was what I thought, and I just completely passed it over several times because the headlines kept coming, right? But generally negative and FUD headlines. It was in 2014 that I quit my career. My wife and I, we sold pretty much everything we owned, took the kids out of school, 4 of them. Well, the youngest were only just like in this kind of daycare thing, but the other 2 were in full school. And we traveled the world with them for the next 2.5, 3 years via the sharing economy, doing home swaps wherever we could, house sits wherever we could, work away or woofing or, that kind of thing for accommodation, which was the most incredible time. That gave me extra time to start looking into, macro investments, what's going on in the macro landscape. And by chance, I'd become friends with Grant Williams, who lived in Singapore at the time, who was co-founding Real Vision alongside Raoul Pal at that exact time. So I was one of the very early subscribers just to show support. And I was very quickly completely overwhelmed by how incredible a product they were putting together. Long form interviews about macroeconomics, financial markets from all corners of the world, from all different markets, trying to put the pieces of the puzzle together instead of a 1.5 snippet on, Squawk Box, whatever we were ever kind of exposed to before. And I remember asking Grant, are you ever going to do anything about like this Bitcoin thing? Because it keeps not dying. He's like, yep, we're releasing some in a few weeks. And those interviews were pivotal for me. I think this must have been around 15 by then. Tour de Mista, Trace Mayer, Wences Cesares, these guys started appearing on Real Vision. And this was when Real Vision would only drop 1 or 2 interviews per week. So I knew, and I would be sitting there like, come on, it's Friday. Like, where's the interview? Who's next? Who's up? And unfortunately, it's turned into an absolute shit show. Raoul, you should be appalled at what Real Vision is turned into. You've completely gone against your original ethos. And I'm glad Grant managed to walk away with his reputation intact and go and skirt off and do something else, because it's turned into an absolute crypto fest where they're going to get people wrecked. And it's really a true shame. And I know Daz, Down Under Daz, probably a big friend of yours as well. He and I have had this conversation. He went on the similar journey to me and found a lot of value from that platform, and unfortunately watched it just bend the knee to the wave of fiat money that was being thrown at the crypto world, the wider crypto world, and fell into the trap of trying to harvest subscription and farm subscriptions off of that. And so it's a real shame. Anyway, I digress. That's how I found Bitcoin. That's how I started learning about it. Then I was really pulled into the rabbit hole when I found people such as Andreas Antonopoulos and started watching all of his videos and reading his books. I'm like, wow, like this is nothing that I had ever expected it to be, but still come at it from number go up.
Yeah.
I still started investing in it with 3 to 5 year time horizon. One day this might be 10x, this could be a 10 bagger, right? This could be a 50 bagger, who knows? I still had that kind of mindset. That took years of study and reading and understanding and listening to other people on podcasts or YouTube videos to really understand. And one of my favorite sayings is, came for the money, stayed for the money. And when that clicks for people, when that truly clicks, you're like, oh shit, this isn't some financial investment. This is something completely different. This is something that is going to change the absolute base layer of humanity. We're evolving. Like this is a moment in history that is going to be studied for thousands of years to come. We are, as a species, evolving onto a financial instrument, like perfect money. We got close with gold. Yeah. I mean, you got to give gold its dues, and we've got to give our ancestors their dues for finding gold. And unfortunately, it got corrupted over time by the Wall Street bros and financial wizardry and theft and paper gold and whatever else. So what did we find now? We found a finite digital scarcity, and like those 3 words are a lot. You can't drop those in your first orange pilling session.
No.
It takes a long time to get there. But when you understand that, everything changes. You look at everything differently. And when I look back on my career, it's like, whoa, I can at least now see some of the behaviors of myself, of the people around me, what was driving those behaviors. Obviously, the fiat incentives, all of our incentives completely misaligned. What it does to people, nobody was happy. Everybody was contradicting who they were. Everyone's wearing a mask. It was, and you could apply that to every sector, not just finance. Yeah. Anyone. I mean, look at like the health industry now. Bitcoiners, the education system. So Bitcoiners that teachers, right? Teachers who are trapped in a system that is designed to control and destroy people's souls. And a teacher that has been trapped into that system, and the intention of going in with the morally correct intention of going in to mentor young people to have been trapped in a system, to have their energy turned against them and turned against kids. When orange-pilled Bitcoiners come out, teachers come out of that system and look back, they'll see it all. And they'll realize that they were wearing a mask. Same with health practitioners. They went into that business to help people. And what did they end up doing? They become a drug pusher for the allopathic freaking cartel that would, in the first place, trained them and then gave them the certificates and then gave them the the drugs to go and give out to people, doing people more harm than good, and keeping people just sick enough or just well enough to keep coming back. When you see all of this, and I'm not sure what area that you work in your fiat life, but when you do look back, once you've been through that arc, that journey, and you can put the big orange Bitcoin blue blocking glasses on and look back at it, you see through the lies. And this is why so many of us feel so lonely, right? Because you can walk around the supermarket and you look at people and you just look at the way they're acting, and like, these people are literally like the NPC, the non-player character meme is so good, that they're literally on autopilot here. They're going up one aisle, they know where the breakfast cereal that's killing their kids is, and they know which one their kids prefer, and bam, but they don't even look. Right? Then the next aisle, then it's like, all right, where's all the chocolate bars? They don't even look. There's the crisps. They don't even look. There's the sodas. Then the next one. Oh, right. Okay. Where's this? Like, they're on a pattern. And this is why, dirty little secret from supermarkets, this is why they changed their supermarkets around a lot, because they have to break you out of that pattern so you see other things that you might want to buy that you never thought about buying in the first place.
Oh.
When you see all of that, you're like, man, when's the next Bitcoin conference? I got to be around my people.
It's true. And I kind of what you were saying in the earlier piece there was, it's actually irrelevant what your intentions are on average. I mean, we can even give people the benefit of the doubt, whether they're teachers, whether they're health practitioners, hell, even politicians. And I think politicians next to actors are probably some of the more questionable people on earth. But a lot, like, I often use the example of Obama. And like, he came in with all this optimism and people were riding him and saying like, this guy is going to change. And actually, if you've understood politics and you understand how these guys get there in the first place, it doesn't matter what their intentions are. They're ultimately beholden to the corporate donors. And he didn't do anything different to any of the people before him. And so if you want to succeed in politics, you necessarily have to compromise. And that's just the way it works. You have to do a deal with this particular MP to get your agenda across. And it applies in the context of, medicine. You go in there and you want to help people. I mean, that's your calling. But, when I hear someone's like, oh, they've got a back injury and the only thing the doctor's done is prescribe opioids, then I think to myself, are you actually helping this person? You know what I mean? But I suppose the question, Daniel, here is, why are Bitcoiners able to think like this? That's the real question. Like, what is it about us specifically that has enabled us to see through the mirage of these systems that have been imposed upon us that we never actually chose? Health, healthcare, politics, whatever it is. Like, why do we see it, without trying to sound self-righteous?
Yeah, everyone will see it. Yeah, we just stumbled upon it for whatever reason before most other people. I don't think, we shouldn't sound self-righteous, because the truth will set you free. So when you see the truth, you will be set free. And that, I believe that for the globe, that it is just waiting, but getting through to getting that truth shone through this impenetrable barrier of like propaganda mainstream media throws out all over the place. They control everything. Like, they control the newspapers, the magazines, the radio shows, the television broadcasts. They control social media, right? I mean, what's social about it, really? It started that way, but now it's complete. Right. But now it's completely controlled, and they can just form a narrative. If they wanted to spin up a hashtag, they could do that whenever they want. It's controlled. So TikTok and all of these other different platforms now, and even when you go, you can't curate anything that you want to see. Like, everybody knows Facebook does this too. Like, they just push political agendas at you. This has been proven. This isn't a conspiracy anymore. The same thing with Brexit. Like, that was an absolute freaking disaster, Facebook's involvement in that. So getting the truth to people is so difficult because you have to ask them to do the complete opposite to what they do every single day. And that is unplug from this shit. Like this, but it's almost like a drug to them because this is the thing that forms their opinions and conversations that they have every day. And I hear the older generation, my parents' generation, say this all the time. Well, if you don't watch the news, how are you going to stay informed? You've got to be informed of what's going on in the world and world affairs and current affairs. You have to stay up to date. That is a brainwashing mentality. They've been brainwashed into believing that. And it's been a slow drip. They didn't have a television growing up. It didn't exist, man. Wasn't available. And so over the last 5 decades that they've now been, it's almost like, you used to be shut out of the world. You didn't used to know what was going on in current affairs unless you listened to the wireless, which they used to call like the radio, at a certain time of day and listen to the boring announcement. I mean, what 15-year-old kid is going to do that? They're not, right? No. But when they become 25 and now they're exposed to, there's television, there's radio, I can stay up with current affairs. And if I don't, then I'm going to look dumb and unintellectual. And, this all goes back to the conditioning that we all face going through the education system as well. That's where they really get you. They take you away from your parents at the age of 5. They force you into a classroom and then they force feed down your neck, all of this information that they decide that you need to learn to become a good citizen, in air quotes.
Yeah.
Man, unraveling all of that is freaking difficult. But when they do see the truth, you cannot unsee the truth, and they will find their way there. Our job to do podcasts like this, to do YouTube videos, to write articles, and just to keep pounding the table. It's like, no, we will not bend the knee to this BS any longer. And just on politics.
We can swear on this podcast.
Okay.
It's fucking bullshit.
Just on politics. I was gifted a book the other day. Big shout out to Hodler Than Thou on Twitter. It was written back in the 90s by an Irish nun. Her name is Deirdre Manifold, and it's called Towards World Government, New World Order. And chapter 5 is just a very short few paragraphs, the left and the right. And I'll just read from here a little bit because what you were talking about, politics and those with good intentions going into it, right? Politics is a game in the pursuit of power. In all democracies, there are 2 separate organizations playing the game. There is a visible one, whose players hold office as members of a government, and an invisible one, composed of individuals who control the visible and in whom is vested the real power, that of money. The visible organization is divided into the left and the right. There are many splinter groups following one or other of these 2, but no matter which of these 2 groups gains power for a time, the self-same goal is followed, that of more and more power for government and less for the people who elected it. Ever-increasing numbers of people must continually be made dependent on government. There is no left, there is no right. It's the same shit, but we get gaslit into believing that your vote matters, whereas it doesn't, because whoever gets in is going to have to bow the knee to the people who really have the power, the money power behind all of this. And then you spend the next 4 years either championing or defending your pointless decision that made no difference to anybody, and you end up paying slightly more tax than you did before because that is the ultimate goal. And what also happens is the burgeoning state. There'll be a new department or 2 opened up, which means another 10 to 100,000 people come under the employ of the government whilst they're in power, right? So in any country, I would say around the world, you're looking at probably a percentage of anywhere between 30 to 60% of that employable nation works as some kind of civil, what's the word I'm looking for?
Civil servant, basically.
Civil servant, or some kind of civil servant or some kind of bureaucrat in some form. And this even includes, of course, we know all of the emergency services and all of the state education services, right? That is a ridiculous amount of people that are purely dependent on the government. They are literally trapped because it's them who pay their wages in the fiat currency that they can just print at whim whenever they want. And you're of this belief as well that you better save in your retirement, because when it gets to a certain age, which is always a moving goalpost, again, by the government, when you get there, you'll get that state pension and you'll be all good and you go and live on the golf course all day long, right? It's sick, all of it. It's complete
a good example that I can think of just off the top of my head as you're speaking is, I don't know if you saw old Xi Jinping popped into San Francisco and Wokester Gavin Newsom met up with him, and miraculously their homelessness problem was eviscerated overnight. It's not as if they actually want to fix it. And then what I've actually learned subsequently is, and maybe this is a term that I've made up, but it's almost like there's a homeless industrial complex where there are people who rely on homeless people. They don't want to fix the problem. So you've got these sort of subsidized NPOs that have boards of directors earning upwards of $500,000 US per annum. And it is not in their interest to actually fix the problem, because that would mean they're out of work. And I suppose what you're also alluding to earlier is the fact that I'm not aware of any governments, at least in the last 20 years, that has gotten smaller, that has said, look, I think that's a department we don't need. It feels like our overheads are heavy. When you've got the monopoly on money printing and on power, you don't have that sort of profit motive. You don't have to worry about competitors, so you just bloat and bloat and bloat. And yeah, it's actually quite mind-blowing. It all comes down to incentives, and I think that's what Bitcoiners are actually able to see quite clearly, I feel.
Absolutely. Most of these people are trying to find ways to validate their existence, because there's literally, like, that's why you end up with the most ridiculous, like, local council decisions. Like, why is there a roundabout being built like there? For what reason? Why is there a Pelican Crossing going in? Why isn't there but these people that are making those decisions, they have a use it or lose it budget to work with. Because if they do not spend that money to build the roads, in air quotes, then they will lose that budget next year. And they need to be able to increase headcount as well. Otherwise, they're going to lose their jobs. It's a career risk for them. And their career, to try and climb the ladder, is trying to get out of that department into the next department, which has a slightly better budget, slightly better salary, slightly more responsibility, perhaps a little bit more interesting. So when you look around, like, just walk around your local town now with your eyes open, you're like, what's going on here? Yeah, they're swapping out all of the dustbins, the bins. The bins are being upgraded. What? What? We used to have, right, exactly. Who got that contract? So now all of the dumpster trucks are being upgraded. You're like, what? Someone somewhere is making some killing, and it's the people that serve the government as well, right? They're incentivized. The people that fix the roads, classic. Potholes all over the place on government roads. You hit a private toll road, the place is like pristine. Somebody breaks down, there'll be an emergency vehicle right there straight away. There are road sweepers out, keep shit off the roads, make sure everybody's safe. Brilliant. A government road, especially here in France, just potholes everywhere. Absolute nightmare. Uneven roads. Same in the UK. Absolute nightmare. So the company that are there to fix those roads, what's their incentive? Their incentive is to fix it just good enough that it will need fixing again in around 3 to 4 years or after a big frost or something, right? Because they know that their customer, the government, has endless pits of money, and they know that they can overcharge and they would happily pay. So all they've got to do is either slightly undercut the 1 or 2 people that might be competing with them, or get into bed with the guy that's cutting the check. Either way, us as the civilians that are actually paying the money to have the roads fixed and made safe are losing. It's so when you see things like that, when these are the truths that we are talking about, irrefutable truths, and when you can help people understand that, just follow the money. That's where the misaligned incentives are. And then let's talk about the money. How is that broken? And that is when people start figuring out, okay, but like I said, these are conversations that need to be had for many hours with people who are willing to listen and aren't in that weekend mode of, right, it's 5 o'clock, down the pub, meet the mates, talk about the sports ball that's going to happen tomorrow, perhaps go out and get blatted on Saturday night, and then sleep hungover on Sunday, have a brunch, few jars, just to make sure I fall asleep tonight, and back to work on Monday morning.
Yeah. I think what you said there was actually it's quite poignant. Is it's always about following the money. And shout out to my aunt who's in her 70s, listened, and she's like, it sounds like Bitcoin is like money without governments. It's separate to them. And I'm like, absolutely. It's it's what you're saying there is really poignant about, it's always about following the money. And if you can work backwards from there and say, look, the Bitcoin ethos is don't trust, verify. So you go, okay, what's the incentive? Let's take the lockdowns. You go, what's the incentive for the drug peddlers? They want to keep it going. They want to eliminate competition. Cheap, sort of available drugs that could alleviate symptoms are not desirable. We need to thrust this new product because that's what we can, and it's a subscription service that we can get people to sign up to. So just start with that lens and then work your way backwards. And if you think that this thing still has value, then cool. But what most people aren't doing, from what I can tell, is going through that process, whatever it might be, whether it's, the medical industry or governments or anything like that. They actually relieve, when what I try and tell people also is like, the crazy thing about tax is firstly, like, why are you paying tax if they can just print it? I'm not saying zero tax is the right answer, but that's always something to think about. And the other thing is that it's like working for the government for half, let's say it's 50%, half your working career is working. It's like a pay to stay. It's like your entrance fee to live here. And that's fine, but most people aren't even thinking about that. So that's what I think Bitcoiners do a little bit differently. And I suppose I'll even layer in one other thing there, Daniel, is like, there's people that are exposed to Bitcoin and they've got like a small allocation. They're like investors. I think what we're describing are Bitcoiners who get I think you hinted at it earlier, essentially like you came for the gains and you stay for the revolution, where there's something bigger here. It's the censorship resistance. It's sort of like, it can't be altered, and it's fundamentally trustless. You can extract humans along that journey. And I want to talk about your book too. And you mentioned this in your book, Choose Life, your journey as a digital nomad. You mentioned that initially you sort of were dabbling in some cryptocurrencies, and I think ETH and Dash were part of it. And I'd love to hear how you sort of broke away from that, and then how you explain it to people, because a lot of people now are talking, at least the conversation I'm having, of, is there going to be another crypto run? And are we going to have more conversations where you're like, no, crypto's here, Bitcoin's there, they're different. I don't know what your thoughts are on that stuff.
Yeah, of course it's coming. And I remember having a conversation with Matt Odell in 2020. And I asked him this question because we'd been through 2017, right? We'd seen the ICO craze, where the initial coin offering, and this was the next big thing, like, oh, Bitcoin's great and all, but this is Bitcoin and this, you know, and everybody had all of these bright, bushy-tailed ideas, and a lot of us got caught up in it, and a lot of us got wrecked and lost Bitcoin because we were exchanging Bitcoin into these other shiny things because we hadn't gone through like the full work of understanding exactly what we were holding at that point. And I asked Matt, what's it going to be now? He said, well, I don't know, but what's this DeFi thing that everybody's talking about? I don't know, mate. What does it mean? What does it mean, DeFi? And sure enough, then what else do we have? CeFi. I'm so glad that I had gone through the 2017 stuff that I never got pulled into any of this other crap. And what else have we had since then? Well, we've had all of this NFTs. Oh my goodness. And then that's spilling over into ordinals, and people from within the Bitcoin community really pushing ordinals and like the narrative. So Matt said, I remember Matt saying, he's like, there are shitcoiners among us. There is going to be something, and it's going to be bad. So I will carry on that message from Matt that going into 2024, 2025, there are shitcoiners among us. There's going to be something shit, and people are going to get wrecked. There's already this drive chain narrative that's being pushed and pushed and pushed. And thankfully, it's not getting too much steam. But if somebody grabs onto that and starts, running with it, we could have that coming at us. So to anybody listening, Bitcoin only. It's that simple. Why would you make your life hell by trying to track anywhere between 15 to 20,000 other investable crypto assets? It's nonsense. Bitcoin only. Laser eye focus. That's why we have the laser eyes on, because we cut out the noise and take self-custody. Whenever you're stacking Bitcoin, take self-custody, get a hardware wallet, and just live your life for the next 5-10 years.
Yeah.
And you'll be set. And you will be set. And it doesn't matter if you're 20 now or if you're 50 now. I guarantee you somebody listening to this would be very interested in knowing that I will be set in 5 to 10 years if I can just put away a couple of $100 a week into Bitcoin and take self-storage and look after it. And there's a lot of people out there that can give that advice now. BTC Advisor, as you know, they give advice. Yeah. Amber, another great company down in your neck of the woods. But globally, people listening globally, find your Bitcoin-only companies, find your Bitcoin-only podcasters, find your Bitcoin-only people to follow on Twitter, and listen. Just stay humble, stack sats. Another Matt Odell-ism.
Yes, what a great message. And look, I think this is an appropriate time to talk about this, and then we can jump into your book, which I'd really like to unpack a little bit.
Of course.
It seems as if we've gone through, I mean, this is my first sort of tour of duty, if you like. I thought I was an absolute genius. I was humbled. I took a bit of leverage. I got whacked over the head, and I had to ride a pretty hellish sort of bear market. And I feel like a lot of us almost are patting ourselves on the back now. We're saying, well done. We did it. We didn't fold. We held. And we're sticking to our thesis of, TikTok next block every 4 years, just programmatically gets scarcer and numbers should go up. So this is the question now. We've got the halving coming up, and there's debate around, is it priced in or not? But when you talk to people, and now we're talking number go up here, because I think you and we're on the same page when it comes to freedom go up and everything that Bitcoin entails from a cultural perspective. But I think, as you said earlier, the new entrants are going to care about the number. That's what matters, because you come for the gains and you stay for the revolution. What do you see happening in this cycle? And we can just speculate on sort of fiat figures, if you like. And then, what if somebody's sort of now in their early 20s and they're trying to accumulate, like, what could we imagine is happening in a decade? Because we'll call this hopium. It's not advice, but I like to think that we've been through a tough time. So let's look forward to greener times.
Okay, the halving price then. What a fun topic to talk about. For those people that aren't aware of what the halving event is, every 4 years there is a halving in the block reward that given to the miners that append the next block to the blockchain. So it currently stands at 6.25 Bitcoin reward. That is going to get halved in around April to 3.125. Then it will get halved again 4 years later, halved again 4 years later. So when we have this discussion, like, is the halving priced in? People are asking, well, the halving's coming up. Surely the price of Bitcoin is going to go up, and it does, because we come back to finite digital scarcity. This is an investable asset that has a hard cap of 21 million. and we're forever decreasing the inflation of the Bitcoin into the system every 4 years. So is it priced in? No, it can't be. It's not priced in by definition of the fact 99% of the freaking people in the world have no idea Bitcoin even exists, and they certainly have no idea about a halving event, and so they certainly don't understand finite digital scarcity. So no, it's not priced in. You can never ever assume or guess where the price will ever go. It historically has gone up over time, but now going into this one, and it will go up again. I'm not going to put a price metric on it though. People just stack your sats. It's going to be higher.
Yes.
It's going to be a lot higher. So, and another thing people are talking about right now is the Bitcoin ETF priced in? Because we have a lot of these talks going on right now around the world, in America especially. I think they have 12 lined up that have applied to open a spot ETF, and the SEC have dragged their feet over this for God knows how long. But if they all get green lit, we have one in Europe, by the way, one's already going. If they get green lit, that will, you can't price that in. In fact, actually, I tweeted just 2 days ago, or yesterday maybe, the ETF, the Bitcoin ETF has been priced in since October of 2022. Because in October of 2022, Bitcoin was at $65,000. Why did we go all the way down to 16,000, currently bouncing around 35,000, the same kind of year period that all of these Bitcoin ETFs were being put together? You know, like the conspiracy theorist in me would say, perhaps someone has been driving the price in a certain way with their clout, a lot of media appearances, a lot of negative FUD articles to shake out Bitcoin investors, shake out Bitcoin holders, because they know they're going to have to stock up on it, load up on it when the time comes for them to launch an ETF. Because if they want to launch an ETF, they've got to be holding the underlying asset. So is the Bitcoin ETF priced in, or has it already been priced in? And that's why we're seeing suppressed prices. What is the true price of Bitcoin in US dollar terms, in Aussie dollar terms? Nobody's ever going to know. So stop looking at YouTubers that are drawing lines on charts and telling you that there's a golden cross, or this is rolling over, or this is doing that, and this is a signal of like, it's all bullshit. Again, Bitcoin only, self-custody, tune out of the noise, read the books, listen to the podcasts, forget the charlatans. It's going up. No one knows where. No one knows exactly what time, but you will be in that position in 5 to 10 years' time where you will be able to change your life and step away and out of a system that you've probably painted yourself into a corner over the last 5, 10, 15 years.
There we go. It's going up forever, Laura. That's all we can say.
There you go. It's kind of designed to pump forever. I got another Matt Odell quote out. So.
Yeah. Okay, no, I think that's actually a really reasonable take. And yeah, I mean, you know, as for those charts and whatnot, I mean, who cares what happens in the short term? I mean, it's like horoscopes for men. It's just better to, you know, do you want to trade or do you want to invest? And I often say to people, it's like, don't waste your time trying to be a trader. It's really hard. I mean, you know that probably better than anyone. And the easiest thing is like, Bitcoin is the asymmetric opportunity of a generation. Just buy little bits and hold. And that's as simple as it is. It's like the easiest game. And one of my favorite quotes from Hodl is actually like, he goes like, holding Bitcoin, it's actually, or it's something the lines of like, you know, holding Bitcoin, it's a very simple strategy, but it's fucking difficult because you've actually just got to have that long-term conviction. Like sometimes sitting in your hands, doing the same, like do the simple thing, getting out of your own way is going to be the thing that performs best. But people have a bias towards action and interfering when it comes to money matters. And so, yeah, I think your advice is pretty sound there.
Yeah, it is difficult. Hodl is correct. Sit on your hands. Yeah, nothing really further to add except the leverage thing. I mean, maybe there's a tool there if you're looking to further a business, or if you're looking to buy a house or some land. Maybe there's a case. Everybody's in different stages of their lives, but don't use leverage to try and get yourself more Bitcoin. Like that's still just trading.
Yeah.
And a lot of people will get wrecked. And you have to also remember, especially going into the next couple of years, you're going to see banks really enter this space. As soon as this ETF gets greenlit, shit's going to go crazy, because now all of a sudden the people that have been sat on the sidelines with bags of cash because Bitcoin is not seen as an investable asset, in air quotes, it will be risk off. Bitcoin will become a risk off asset as soon as an ETF is greenlit, and there will be a huge run into the space that will pump the price, that will make things go crazy. There will be banks in a year or two, like your high street names, most likely as well, will start offering loans against your Bitcoin. Don't do it. I just want to say, be very, very careful, because don't forget, you'll be handing over your Bitcoin to them with the promise of some kind of return. And history has shown banks or institutions will rug pull you at any time, whenever they want, or the government will come over the top of them and rug pull you on the bank's behalf. And lo and behold, your Bitcoin might be gone, but you might get some shiny fiat in return as some insurance policy, or even worse, a CBDC, because that's kind of the landscape that we're moving into. So that's my warning. Stay humble, stack sats, keep your head down, cold storage.
Brilliant. Okay, sage advice. All right, let's now move on to your book, Choose Life. It's a journey as a digital nomad. And I guess the way I would characterize it is you're someone who has taken all these socialized norms about what we're supposed to do, and you kind of turned it on its head. And as I was reading that book, everything about, whether it's traveling with kids to home swapping to education and just all this kind of stuff, you're sort of taking the model and saying, you guys think this is impossible. I'm going to show you that it's actually within reach. So let's just talk to firstly life as a digital nomad, and outline perhaps some of the more difficult aspects of it, because I think we often see someone glamorous sitting on a beach and they'll tweet it, but then you don't know what's happening actually in the background there.
Sun glare's a bitch. You can't work on a laptop on a beach. Has anybody actually ever tried that? You can't see shit.
Yeah.
Like I can't believe there isn't a product in the market out there so you can actually sit on a beach with a laptop. No, you have to go find a very, like, you got to be sat somewhere where there's shade, where you can actually see the emails or whatever it is that you're trying to do, right? That's one of the most stupid pictures that I see people posting around. To me, it just means being location independent. My career just had me tied to a desk. I was done with that. And I know there are a lot of careers out there that you probably still have the belief that you need to be tied to a desk. I mean, COVID smashed that a lot, right? Lockdowns freed people's minds in a certain way that it's like, I can actually do this job from anywhere. Why can't I be, in air quotes, a digital nomad? But yeah, that kind of term has been kind of glorified and misrepresented, I would say, by people that are doing exactly that. They got the cocktail and whatever else. And I've probably been guilty of it myself, because, just to put it out there when we were traveling and doing that thing. But am I a digital nomad now? Well, yes, I suppose so. Even though we have a fixed position in France, I'm location independent. All I need is my laptop and a pair of earphones, and I can record a Zoom call from anywhere as long as I'm on Wi-Fi, and I can carry on the podcast from anywhere. You could be, as soon as a little bit of revenue starts coming in, and you can think to yourself, do I, put more time into this now? And as soon as you do, release yourself from your daily fiat life. That's one thing that people have to understand. The opportunity cost of all of that brain drain that you spend 8 hours a day doing for somebody else. is really that. If you turn that on its head, but it's too scary for most people. It was for me, especially, why did I pull off the Band-Aid? Well, I read The 4 Hour Workweek by Tim Ferriss. Why did that resonate with me? Because I had a wife and 4 kids at home I rarely saw. And I was living what he termed a deferred lifestyle. And I knew I was, because I'd sit there every day, turn my computer on and think to myself, perhaps another 10 to 15 years of this and I'll be good. And then maybe I can go and play golf and, do whatever it is that I want. And I would, always constantly thinking about that. And like, man, he made me realize you're wishing your life away. So that was the impetus for us to go. And then once you have that impetus, it's just putting into steps. Okay, what does this look like actually? How are we going to do this? What does it look like to take the kids out of school? Right. All right. No, surely that's a non-starter. Okay. No, there are other families that travel the world with their kids and their kids look perfectly intellectually fine. In fact, I'm reading their blog posts from 13-year-olds. Like, what? That blew my mind. And then it's like, well, what about accommodation? I can't pay for a hotel room everywhere we go. Like, we need 2 hotel rooms. That's a non-starter. That's going to bankrupt us. What's this home swapping thing? Like, people travel the world swapping their homes, or couch surfing, or voluntarily working for accommodation. You start just falling down all of these different paths and rabbit holes. So all of a sudden, a whole new world opens up. And that's one thing that that's what we noticed after about just 6 months, how differently we started looking at things, feeling about things, viewing the people around us. We had a total restoration in faith in humanity, because we were going from different country to different culture. We were perpetual tourists. We were perpetual guests in whatever country we were at. But we were always received with warmth, open arms. People were interested in our story. Like, who are these? Like, what's this family doing here at this time of day? Like, we would always get weird looks. Sometimes, I think I wrote in the book about the lady in the supermarket that was giving us the side eye in the UK. What, how are all of you here at the moment? A snickety remark, like, school holidays today, because she didn't have any other way of asking outright. We're like, oh, no, we homeschool the kids. And then it was like the recoil.
Yeah.
Like, what? Oh, I've not met anyone like you before, because, you've just shone a light on her predisposition. And like, what are children doing out on a Wednesday morning? It's not outside of school term. This is how we've been organized as a society. We lock our kids up from the age of, God, man, it's so sick. We've got, new mothers now giving over babies to 8-hour-a-day daycare. And it's like, whoa, this is how far humanity has fallen. But we lock our kids up between the ages of 5 and 22. They're just locked away, except for 6 weeks a year where they're allowed out. And then it's all freaking mayhem. Traffic's a nightmare. Flights go up. You can't go on holiday. It's just, everybody wants to avoid those periods.
Yeah.
We lock our 22-year-old to 72-year-old up in a cubicle, and we lock our 72-year-olds up to death in old people's homes. What are we doing? It's just that's the way society has been ordered, because of the control that people have over the money and the government institutions that make us act in a certain way. So for anybody that wants to break free of that, it's difficult, because, like we've been talking about this whole thing, you've got to look at life through a different lens. Books do help. Tim Ferriss's one helps. My one helps if you're a family man, because, like you said, we did do it. Like, there's no refuting the fact that we did it. I wrote a book, why we did it, how we did it, the challenges we faced, the failures we had, the successes we had. And I just want as many people to feel that freedom, because it's, once you feel that, there's no going back. Take a 9-month or 1 year sabbatical. Most people can get that by their boss, especially if they've been, if you're mid-30s, mid-40s, just take that sabbatical. Say, listen, I need to drop a knee for a year. Gonna go and do this, blah, blah, blah. I'll be available once a month or whatever. There's something you can work out. But until you have that conversation, you'll keep turning up 9 to 5 every single day.
Bit on. And I suppose for anyone listening, just if you have a read of Daniel's book, it'll just help you kind of walk through some of the common misconceptions, some of the common objections, and really kind of illustrate the fact that these things are actually closer. They're more easily within your grasp than you think, as you've just described the example of just saying, hey, I need to take some time out. I'll put this out here. I don't know when this will happen for me, but my wife and I have got a vision of living in the African bush for a year. And that's what we want to do. And when I read your book, there were just aspects of it that I was like, I want to do that. Like, I want to go live in Mallorca. I love Mallorca. I'm going to go spend some time there. And there is something liberating and freeing. And when I think of, we have these conversations here at home often where it's like, we're not normal people. We're not the picket fence people who kind of just want to have kids and go through this whole system and go do the 9 to 5. We've got great ambitions. And it even helps the fact that actually most of my friends in South Africa have left. So it's not as if I'm like, I can go back to a home, because it's not the same. So I look at myself as a global citizen and hope to be able to employ some of your tactics one day, Daniel, because I found them very inspirational. And I would certainly recommend your book to anyone who just wants to kind of get a flavor, whether it's in relation to the schooling. You have a whole piece about traveling with kids. Hint, it's not as bad as you think. And all the excuses that people line up for effectively delaying living. And I think that's your kind of key message. It's like, live now, because 95% of people kind of live for some sort of uncertain date in the future. When they arrive, are probably not even going to be happy.
Exactly. And again, to reiterate, we did this before we found Bitcoin. It wasn't as if found Bitcoin, made mad gains, and said fuck you. Like, that wasn't a thing. Like, no, it was. I think the most powerful thing that we did, well, personally I did, was I followed Tim Ferriss's advice. I think it was in the 4-Hour Workweek. He must have talked about fear setting rather than goal setting, because we get gaslit into goal setting all the time, right? This is how you're going to achieve, and blah, blah, blah. And every self-help guru says the same thing about 1,000 times, just 1,000 different ways. But the idea of fear setting resonated with me, because it's like, all right, okay, all the excuses that keep coming up in your head, bam, 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 write them down, because they're your biggest fears. And then figure out, well, what would I do to reverse that? If the worst did happen, what would I do? What would be my rational thought process? And so my biggest fear just was always going bankrupt, living under a bridge, squandering everything that we'd ever worked for. I'd worked for 18 years at that point. I'm like, my God, I'm going to lose every penny. Like, living without a wage, because I had no side hustle, I had nothing. It was literally going to be, let's live on savings for a little while. Let's go and live now. Let's go and travel, and then end up, probably back in the job somewhere. So writing down that fear, and then, okay, put yourself there, put yourself in that picture. No money left, gone completely bankrupt. Any investment that you made has gone to zero. You're in a foreign country, and the kids, they're all completely, they've not been in school, so they can't read, they can't write, all of this other complete nonsense that goes through your head, which isn't true as well. What would you do? Well, first thing, be like, okay, well, who do you call first? Well, your family. Okay, well, how many houses would we be welcome in? And between my wife and I, we have 2 brothers each, and we have a set of parents. Like, oh shit, there's a lot of rooms. That gets solved pretty quickly. So we wouldn't be living under a bridge. Okay, and we'd have warm food in our bellies 2-3 times a day. Okay, and you'd have access to the internet and a telephone, and your initial network hasn't gone anywhere. They're still there. Make 5 phone calls, you'll probably find a job offer. All right, fuck it, let's go. Yes. But you have to go through that you've got to write down like 5 or 6 of these, and then go through that process of what if, what are the steps you would put in place to rectify that situation. Because believe it or not, you are an intellectual human being. You can overcome many, many problems. As human beings, we are problem-solving machines. We thrive in a problem-solving environment. Unfortunately, generally, our day-to-day is just doing the same mundane task 6,000 times a day, whatever it is.
Yeah. 100%. And yeah, it's a really inspirational message and a great note to end off on. I really appreciate your generous time, and it's been just wonderful chatting about philosophical stuff, life stuff, a bit of Bitcoin stuff. And yeah, I'm sure people are really going to enjoy this. Would you like to give the audience a sort of handoff to where they can find you and your content?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we just talked about the book that's available. Don't go to Amazon. Don't. Go to bitcoinbook.shop, bitcoinbook.shop. Okay. And don't just buy my book, buy any of the other excellent books that are hosted there by the Consensus Network team. And if you use the code BITTEN, BITTEN, you'll get 10% off all of those purchases. And if you pay with Bitcoin via the Lightning Network, you also get a 10% discount, and they ship globally as well. So that's the place to go and further your education. They've got books in many different languages as well. So let's break our ties to Amazon when it comes to getting our Bitcoin books.
Brilliant.
And the podcast is Once Bitten, and you can find that on all the podcast channels. I urge anybody that isn't yet to get over to Fountain app, download the Fountain app and Fountain podcast app, and set up an account there, because you can earn Satoshis whilst you're listening to podcasts. And it's a value for value platform. Load up a wallet with a few sats if you're already down the Bitcoin rabbit hole. And then you can set how many sats you stream to the podcaster. So you are rewarding the content creator as well in the best money ever possible at a fraction of a penny. And this is just another way that we build out this network and reward each other and move on to a real economy rather than a fake one, a fixed one, a controlled one, a manipulated one, a coerced one, which has left its mark on humanity at large. So yeah, bright orange future. Let's all get onto a Bitcoin standard.
Let's fucking go. Awesome. What a good note to end. Thanks so much for your time. Appreciate it. And I really hope we get to meet down under sometime.
Yeah, thank you, Dale, and good luck with your planned trip. A year in the bush. Let's go.
Let's do it. All right. Cheers, man. Thanks so much.
Thanks for listening to today's episode. I hope you enjoyed the conversation and that you got some value out of it. Either way, hit me up on Twitter and let me know what you think. My handle is Dale21M. If you've got any suggestions as to people you think I should be talking to or topics I should address too, I would love that sort of feedback. Otherwise, if you want to support the show, there's a couple different ways you can do that. The first is just to share it amongst your friends and family. The more that people hear the message that Bitcoin and crypto are not the same thing, the better. And I want to help people understand that. The second thing you can do is give me a 5-star review on whichever podcast app you're using. Of course, that's only if I deserve it. And last but not least, if you want to stream sats my way via the Fountain app, I'm not going to say no, but it's not expected. Thank you so much for your support thus far. It means the world to me. I appreciate the hell out of you, and the best is yet to come. Much love, friends. I'll see you on the other side.